All right, today we are going to learn how to divide three-digit by one-digit numbers. We learned a couple of strategies in class, but the way I'm going to show you today is called area model. It's basically the reverse of using the box method in multiplication. And when we did it in class, I remember this way being a little bit easier for everybody. And then also because each digit will be in its own box, it's going to be a little bit easier for us to see kind of like where we're at in the problem and how to do it. So just like when we multiplied, we had one box for each digit. So we're going to do the same thing for this. So in order to draw, sorry, my fingers are kind of blending into the whiteboard. So to do this, I'm going to draw a big box, a big rectangle, I guess. And because this number has three digits, I'm going to divide this rectangle into three parts. They don't have to be even, just so you can see that there are three different spots. You are going to be doing a little bit of subtraction in each box, so you might want to make sure that they are a little bit longer going this way. So I'm going to write this 3 over here, and then the 954 is actually going to go inside the boxes, but it's not the same in multiplication. We're not going to write the values. We're going to actually just write the digits. So we're going to write a 9, a 5, and a 4. Yes, these digits have different values, but in order to do this problem correctly, we don't really need to know the values yet. So in order to do this problem, we're going to have to kind of do multiplication and division together just because I know a lot of you know your multiplication facts, but when you go backwards into your division facts, sometimes it can get a little bit tricky. So we're doing division, but in order to do division, we're going to do multiplication. I know it sounds crazy, difficult, and kind of confusing, but I'm going to walk you through a couple different problems. So we are trying to figure out how many times 3 can go into 9, or 3 times what equals 9? Well, I know that 3 times 3 equals 9, so I'm going to write a 3 up at the top, above, outside of this box right here. And then I'm going to have to write what 3 times 3 equals. So 3 times 3 equals 9, and I'm going to write it under that 9 and subtract it. Because it works out evenly, I should get a 0. And now I have 0 left here. Now I need to go over to the 5 and to see how many times 3 can go into 5, or 3 times what equals 5. Well, I know that there's nothing. Nothing times 3 equals 5, so I need to figure out how close I can get without going over. So I know that 3 times 1 equals 3, and 3 times 2 equals 6, but I can't use 6 because it's bigger than 5, so I have to use just 3 times 1. So I'm going to write the 1 at the top, and 1 times 3 equals 3, and I'm going to subtract that. Now 5 minus 3 equals 2, but I can't just leave that 2 there because I need to make sure that I get rid of all the numbers down here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw an arrow, and I'm going to make that 2 go up to that 4 and make it a 24. Because I know that I can't divide 3 into 2 because 2 is too small, I'm just kind of going to let it, I guess carry it over here to the very last box. And so now, instead of saying what is 4 divided by 3, I'm going to say what is 24 divided by 3. So 3 times what equals 24? And I know that 3 times 8 equals 24. So I'm going to write the 8 up here. So 8 times 3 equals 24. Subtract it out, and I should get 0. Now, whatever is left up here at the top outside the box is my answer. So 954 divided by 3 is 318. On these problems today, you will not have any remainders. So everything at the very bottom should equal 0. If you get to this very last box here and it does not equal 0, you know you did something wrong. So let's try another one. Let's try 504 divided by 6. So again, because 504 has 3 digits, I need to draw a box that has 3 spaces. Now I'm going to write 504 inside the boxes. And then I'm going to write the 6 over here outside the box. So I'm trying to figure out how many times 6 can go into 5 and then to 0 and then so on. So let's start at the beginning. How many times can 6 go into 5? Or, in other words, what times 6 equals 5? Well, nothing, because 5 is smaller than 6, so nothing can be divided in. But I can't just leave it blank and go over. I actually need to write a 0 up here at the top. So 0 times 6 is 0. I need to subtract it, and I get 5. Just because something doesn't go into 5 doesn't mean I have to put something there. Otherwise, I'm going to get a wrong answer. So every time that it doesn't work at the top, this top number up here, you write a 0. That way, when you get down to the bottom, whatever's left over, you carry over here. And now I can kind of ask myself, what times 6 equals 50? Well, I know there's something that will get me close, but 6 times something, like nothing times 6 equals 50 exactly. So I'm going to get as close as I can. And I know that if I multiply 6 times 8, I get 48. So that's as close as I can get without going over. So I'm going to subtract 48. This one might be a little bit tricky for you just because you can't subtract 8 from 0, so you have to go over here and borrow. Make that a 4, make that a 10. So 10 minus 8 is 2. And then 4 minus 4 is 0, so it's just 2. So I have 2 left over. I can't multiply anything times 6 to get to 2. So again, I need to bring it over and put it at the 4. And now I need to figure out 6 times what equals 24. So I know that 6 times 4 equals 24. So I'm going to subtract subtract 24 to get 0. My goal on all of these problems is to get a final 0 at the end, because whatever's left over at the top is my answer. Again, you should have no remainders on these problems. I don't need to write this 0 at the top or at the front because 84 is not a number, so I just need to write this 84. So 504 divided by 6 is 84. Let's do one more together. Let's do Let's do 530 divided by 5. So I'm going to, all of these problems today are only going to have 3 digits. So you can just start by drawing the box that has 3 sections. If this number, let's say, for example, had a 1 here because it was 1,530, you would need another box here. But we're not going to do that. So 530 divided by 5, I'm going to write 530 divided by 5. So now I'm going to ask myself, what times 5 equals 5? And I know that 5 times 1 equals 5. So 1 times 5 equals 5, and I can zero that out. There is nothing there. If I wanted to follow the same rules just so I don't get confused, you could bring that 0 over here and do it that way, but you don't need to because it doesn't change the value of this 3. It's still a 3. So now I'm going to ask myself, what times 5 equals 3? And there's nothing that equals 3. So I need to zero this out, but I can't just leave it blank. So I need to write a 0 at the top. 0 times 5 equals 0. Let's subtract that. 3 minus 0 is 3. Then I can take that 3 over to the very end and write that 3 at the top. So now I'm going to say 5 times what equals 30? And I know that 5 times 6 equals 30. Subtract 30, and it's 0. I've achieved my goal, that I've zeroed it out. So 530 divided by 5 is 106. So a couple things to keep in mind. I remember this being a little bit confusing in class, but don't get discouraged. Just keep trying your best. Whenever you get to a point where, let's go back to this, 5 into 3, you can't do it. Don't try to make something up and don't try to make it work because it's not supposed to work. You're supposed to have to put a 0 there in order to make this a 30 over here. So if you get to a point where you can't get 5 into 3, just put a 0 up there, multiply it out, and that way you can move that digit over. That way you actually can divide it. Also, I did all of these problems correctly, but one way to figure out or to notice that if you accidentally make a mistake or that kind of thing is if the number down here, when you subtract stuff out, is bigger than what you're dividing by. I don't have a good example of that other than, thanks Lincoln for sharing your writing with me. Whenever I was doing the other problem, and I was trying to figure out 6 times what got me close to 50. So I was doing, let's go down here, 50 divided by 6. Well, automatically I know that 7 times 6 equals 42. But if I had done 42, I would have gotten a number that was bigger down here than that 6. So, and I'm not trying to confuse you guys, but a good way to think about whether or not you're doing it correctly or not is if you subtract it out correctly and this number down here is bigger than this number, you messed up somewhere, or maybe this number that you multiplied by wasn't quite big enough. So maybe go back and try to, go one more up to see if that works. These numbers that you subtract or that you get after you subtract should always be smaller than this number over here. Another thing to keep in mind is always make sure that you write whatever number you're multiplying by at the top outside of the box, because once you get done and you zeroed it out, whatever's left at the top is your answer. And if you forget to write your numbers up here while you go, you're going to get to the bottom and then you're going to not remember what numbers you multiplied by, and you're not going to have an answer. So you have to go back and kind of do it all over again. So I know it's a lot of steps, but I will put an example on the first slide on Seesaw. That way you have something to go refer back to. Watch this video as many times as you need to. Look at that picture that I'm going to leave up there. And then also just have Mom or Dad email me if you just really, really don't get it. And maybe we can Zoom and I can help you out. Okay?